Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Last Epoch build guide video, and in this one I'm going to talk about a build that I actually can't show you the gameplay footage of. That's actually it, but I hope this will be good enough because I'm very excited for this. I've tested some of the mana sustainment of this character in game the best I can, and I have play tested a little bit in the CT, but I'm not allowed to show you the gameplay footage of it. Enough chit chatter of that shit. Let's go talk about an actual minion build. What we're looking at is a Necromancer using double putrescence cycle rings. What these do is resurrecting your zombies 1 second after they've died. And this is going to be 100% chance divided by the amount of zombies you have actually up. So when they die. So if you have one zombie and one ring and it dies 1 second later, it's guaranteed that it will be resummoned. If you have two zombies and one ring, it's a 50% chance to get resummoned. But when the second zombie dies, you're down to one and it will be summoned. Having two of these means that I will never go below having two zombies. So what we're going to do is we're going to run two zombies consistently, and the way we're going to summon them in the late game is actually by using the experimental modifier on our belt. This belt base could be a war decay threshold, could be movement speed if you prefer as well, and the modifier we're looking for is the experimental one that summons zombies when you use a potion. By having this, you can then simply summon another 4 zombies by clicking your potion button and go from 2 up to 6 zombies. And they're going to be massive ones doing a stupid amount of damage, and then they are going to destroy bosses. So your potions is basically your resource of burst damage, if you will. You use them once, you have 6 zombies, now you have a % chance of resummoning more of these. And there is a little bit of a change in the patch notes for 1.0 that makes us potentially change the way we've skilled the zombies, which is moving a few points away into this node. This makes them resummon by a % chance when they die as well, but this one will make it expend its actual mana cost. And this is, in fact, an actual mana stacker. Now, we're not going to stay in the region of this, but we have so much mana that we could potentially use that, since the nerf on the patch notes was not to their damage, but actually to their mana cost when we use the big zombie. I want to talk about this real quick in a bit here. Before that, I just want to talk about the mechanic. Essentially, you're going to need to do this. At a minion build, to thrive on the higher end game, you're going to have to use a convocation-like ability. I'm using the word convocation because most people watching this channel probably know me from Path of Exile. And the idea of this is an experimental modifier on our boots. This makes it so that when we use a traversal skill, in this case, we're using transplant. That's going to teleport up to 5 of our minions with us. There's another option for this in the skeletal mage setup, which is going over here, but we need to spend so many points to do this. So that's why we're going to use the experimental mod to achieve this specific approach. This is why this is an endgame build, and I would recommend strongly that you check out the leveling guides instead if you want to level a build like this up and then go from there. Speaking of leveling, we have all of our guides posted on the Icy Veins website. If you check out the link in the descriptions below, you'll get to a guide hub page which shows you all of the builds that I have available for you from Last Epoch. When it comes to the leveling guide, all you have to do is hover over the acolytes, go down to the actual Necromancer leveling guide right there, and you'll end up in this page. This will take you from start to finish with very similar skills that I'll be using in this endgame build variant, and you can level with the Necromancer this way. Enough of leveling. We're talking about the endgame build here. So that's how the resummoning process works. That's how we summon the zombies, and it's how we're going to move and traverse around the place. We're also going to be using a couple of unique items outside of this. Now, the Twisted Heart of Kairos is a very effective item for this build because we're going to be simply casting Chaos Bolts. Now, this allows us to build up a lot of ward, and we're going to get some HP from leeching, and we're going to get that from the Chaos Bolt tree. And they've nerfed this, so it's only 5 to 8%. So this is how we're going to sustain a bit of our actual defensive layers. We also will have reduced bonus taken from critical strikes instead of the crit avoidance. Keep in mind that you don't have to have 100% of this, but the higher the better. This is something we get from both our boots and the boots base. If you can store all the fire res elsewhere, we can have armor and crit damage taken, less the reduced crit damage taken from our helmet. We also have this available on our chest piece. So the important part that we're scaling is actually crit, as you might have noticed on the gear, and the planner will be linked in the descriptions below, as the written guide for this is not done till I playtest this, which I will early after launch. So that's how we're going to deal with the crits. We're going to cap our resistances. Poison rest, it's good if you can get a seal mod of this here and there, but 32% is okay, but you gotta have to be careful when it comes to poison puddles. I would recommend capping it if you can, though. But if you're comfortable like I am, around 30, then that's fine. We're going to use a Death Rattle. We're going to do mana here. More of this in a bit. We're going to use a Raven Crown, where the main focus on our Exalted modifier should be the mana. Level of Volatile Zombie is enough if you have +2. That's a tier 5. Increase HP, of course. Our offhand is just minion health, minion damage, and then resistances. Our body armor is a minion critical strike base with minion crit and minion base crit for our Skelly mages. Very important. Crit reduction and health. And our Scepter is the minion scepter, so that we can reduce the cost of spells, and having cast speed as our prefixes. And our suffixes will actually be mainly focused on minion spell and bow damage, or minion spell and melee damage. And the reason for this is because we're looking for the spell damage. Any of those two can be the Exalted mod, and the other one tier 5. That's the best way you can do this. And if you're able to seal a necrotic penetration for our minions, that's also preferable. The patch notes change the Skeletal Mage node right there to cast the Profane Oblation, which will deal necrotic damage instead, which will be absolutely insane with the scaling. So the build was improved from the patch notes significantly. The Jewel Rust Obsessions is from the Temporal Sanctum tier 4 Jewel Dungeon, or tier 3 actually, and in which you want to have cast speed if you get an LP, preferably. Same thing with Twisted. Cast speed is going to help a lot with this build. And that's basically the covering of the actual gearing. The idols themselves, we're going to be using Giga Life large idols. With the smaller ones will help a little bit with resistances. It's in here that we can move some of the res into actually having poison res. We're going to run 2 of these bad boys with flat crit to our Skelly mages, and also increase necrotic damage to 2 of those. And then the passive is very simple, very straightforward. We're all going to scale armor, and we're going to make sure that we get this little node here for ward gain on nearby deaths. When you kill a pack of enemies, you're going to get a surge up of ward. We're not going to have super high ward with it, but it's going to help us have a very nasty high layer of defense on top of our HP. We're going to run minion attack speed and minion armor per level, very important for their survival. The Warlock node is rather important to pick up somewhat early when you play a build like this, because we want to make sure we get access to Chaos Bolt, and we do that through the Chaos Flame, as this applies to our minions, and we then get Occultist Mind for the extra mana per intelligence, because we are mana stacking. More of that when we go through the skills. The tree itself is going to just stack up some damage, attack speed for minions. We're going to have minion and defensive stats, a little bit of extra physical and necrotic damage mostly here, and we're going to get some ward retention, a little bit of it here, to have that extra layer of defense somewhat sustained. Minion HP, very important. Now, if you feel that your minions are fine with surviving, you could move some of these nodes away for more personal defense instead. But most importantly here, we're going to have 1 Vanguard to apply the effectiveness of another minion tanking for you, and we're going to run minion attack cast speed, and we're going to run the crit here. Again, very important with the crit. 3 points in Tyrant, mostly because we need to cap the Cling to Life to make sure your minions have capped minion resistances. This will help them survive significantly. We're going to run the Empty the Grave, that gives us a lot of armor, and then we're going to get extra skeletal mages here. This requires 3 points into this. Then we're going to max out the necrotic rest and elemental rest, because it also gives us minion necrotic damage and flat fire necrotic damage for our minions, as well as the minion crit multi, since we are scaling crit. Now the skills themselves are very simple. As you might have noticed up here, we don't have the summon Wraith skill. The Wraith skill is going to cost us a base of 20 mana. We will be casting this, and that's going to cost us a lot of mana. But we have tons of mana, not too much mana regen, but we're going to cast this to make the actual skeletal mages pop the actual Profane Oblation. This is our main source of clearing ability, and if we run out of mana, then we're going to resort to casting the Chaos Bolts instead. So, why are we casting Chaos Bolts? Well, the way we do it is we're going to have this automate Rip Blood, which is just a bonus. This is basically going to be like a last thing we do, because we're not speccing Rip Blood. It's completely irrelevant. It's just a nice little bonus. We're going to have it apply at 1 on a damn chance. These are also a last resort node, and you can choose any to run any of those are the last nodes. Don't worry about them too much. This is from a level 22, which we actually get from the Twisted. So these two you just ignore early on. We are going to bum rush 1 point in Abrupt Chaos, 1 point in Doom's Vindication, max out Devour the Damned, as well as Cursed Blood and automating the Bone Curse. Now, the reason for this is that this node right there is going to help us sustain mana, and when we're casting this, we should be gaining mana on larger packs of enemies, which will help us sustain this significantly, thanks to the actual cursing. And the Damned is not a curse. We'll apply this with the zombies, which I'll cover in a bit. However, in the end game, we're going to max this out, and we're going to have increased AoE as well, and only 1 point in Chthonic Aura for extra projectiles, because this increases the mana cost, which we're trying to avoid. This makes it cost 15, minus 3 from the weapon, which makes the mana cost at 12. Then we're going to make it so that there's a mana anarchy. This gives us a chance to consume more mana with Chaos Bolt, and it will trigger the revolution. And when this triggers, there's a 13-second duration of a buff that makes you have increased cast speed for your minions, but also +1 flat spell damage per 20 max mana that you have. This is why we're mana stacking, or one of the reasons. This is insanely effective. So you only really want to cast Chaos Bolt to trigger this effect, and then you want to spend your mana casting Wraith so that the Skull Mages will pop the Profane Oblation for giga damage output. Now, since you can't properly sustain this, there's going to be a point where you run out of mana. At that point, you cast some Chaos Bolts instead. So that's how the build will be played. What also is happening with Chaos Bolt is versus bosses, you can then kick your potion, summon a bunch of extra zombies, and when you have a large pack of zombies on the enemy, you can then just cast a Chaos Bolt, and your Chaos Bolt will automatically trigger the volatile zombies exploding on the enemies, dealing significantly extra, like high amounts of damage, like so much more damage. It's crazy. So how do we then curse? Well, volatile zombie, the important part with the zombies are two things. First one is moving into the left side for giant zombies. This allows us to go up to 6 zombies still, but every cast only summons 1 zombie, and it's going to cost a lot more mana. What this happens is that we're in a position where we're going to spam out zombies through our potion and the resurrecting of our putrescence rings. We're also going to be bum rushing all the way over to Corpse Bane so that we can get marked for death. So when they pop, everyone that's touched by these will then be cursed, which will automate the bone curse from the actual Chaos Bolt and allow us to sustain the mana in a better way. Another thing we're going to do is actually take these 2 nodes to Repulse Vomit. This will help them speed up the process of exploding themselves if you're not exploding them with your Chaos Bolt, but these are essentially wasted nodes. However, by taking these 2 nodes, you get a tag on Volatile Zombie to make it a damage over time, and a Necrotic thanks to these 2 nodes, which makes Twisted Heart give it 2 levels. So essentially, you specking these 2 nodes gives you 2 free spec points into the build, or into the skill. So they're literally free. You spec them, you get 2 extra skills you can put elsewhere. That's why we do this. We're going to go to the right-hand side, which means that when the zombies explode, 0.8% of the zombies' max HP is then healed to you, but we're turning that into ward. So this is an effective way for you to get extra layers of defense on top of this. Transplant is going to be a generic approach. We're just going to make sure we get the Acolyte's Fervor. This is how we clear speed is going to be increased, and the CDR is going to be there. So you cast this every 4.3 seconds or something like that. And you're going to have Haste and Frenzy, higher cast speed, better movement speed. You can run through the content very effectively, especially with the experimental traversal with your minions following you when you transplant. And the rest of this is just getting into Bone Curse on arrival. It's a little bit nice addition to it, but mostly we're going for the Bone Armor style up here in the top left corner. Dreadshade is very simple. We're going to be starting out by making sure that the Dreadshade don't consume any HP. We put this on one of our mage skeletons, and we're going to make sure that we are affected by it as well for the increased cast speed, and then just generically getting some reduced, increased necrotic damage for it, getting increased buff effect per 3% missing HP is just a nice bonus. Most importantly, we don't care about the mana of this because it doesn't cost that much to do every now and then due to the duration, but we're getting this one, which gives us armor per vitality to further scale our defenses. Last but not least, we got the Skeleton Mages. In here, we're going to be focusing on making sure they have extra projectiles, because again, we're going to be making sure that these guys are actually our main source of damage on top of the bonus damage you get from our zombies. And here's the tricky part. We're going to be getting this and the attack cast speed, and make sure we get flat spell damage for them into Macabre Waltz, which is going to Profane Oblation our actual wraiths. We'll also be going into base crit strike chance because we're scaling this, crit multi, and making the number of skeleton mages increased. So here's the tricky part with this. If you're able to, in a higher min-max game, when you have like 400 plus flat mana with this build, you're going to want to take points away from flat spell damage and take 1 point away from this. And what you want to do with higher level on this specific skill is move 2 points into Insane Frenzy, which is really good by itself, to reach Forbidden Arcana. The reason for this is that once you have enough mana, more damage per 25 mana is going to outperform the flat damage you get from Gravetide. But this is with gear. So once you're in the high end game gearing, you're going to want to do this switch so you get as many points into Forbidden Arcane as possible, because of the fact you're mana stacking, which will give a stupid amount of extra damage. So that's essentially how the build will play and how it progresses from endgame gearing to, hey, I want to min-max this kind of build. But that's how the build plays. It's very comfortable. Most of it's automated. It has a lot of layers of defense. Armor's on 17, 18, but we're also scaling in a bit of armor from the tree, defense layers in general, and it's just a very comfortable build to play so far. I play tested it the best I can, and I'm very happy to play this build, and I will do so after the launch, which I'll start with the Warlock build. Hope you guys enjoyed this build guide video. Sorry I can't show you the gameplay footage. I'm not allowed to with using the Chaos Bolts. But I hope you guys have fun and a great success in the League launch coming 21st of February. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more content. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe and keep rocking.